But first, we do have a message for Donald Trump's opponent tonight. Now, earlier, Kamala Harris, well, she's not campaigning in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, or any other battleground state. Instead, she is spending time in a place near and dear to her heart, a city filled of lobbyists, government workers, bureaucrats, politicians, far left fake news journalists. A city that Biden carried by more than 92% of the vote, and a city where Kamala feels right at home. And, of course, we are talking about the Washington swamp. And just moments ago, the anointed Democratic candidate made her so-called closing argument at a rally near the White House. And just a few metro stops away, well, violent crime is raging through Washington, D.C. It is one of the most dangerous cities in America. But Kamala didn't talk about crime in tonight's speech. The nation's capital is also struggling with rising homelessness and a record high cost of living. Kamala didn't say much about inflation or the housing crisis she didn't deal with for 4 years. Meanwhile, Washington, D.C. is also suffering from a massive influx of Harris, Biden, unvetted illegal immigrants. But according to Kamala, this is Donald Trump's fault, of course. Take a look.
I will work with Democrats and Republicans to sign into law the border security bill that Donald Trump killed.
Kamala told a lot of lies tonight, and that was the amnesty bill that would allow millions of illegal immigrants into the country every single year. That was not a border security bill by any stretch of the imagination. And that wasn't the only lie from tonight's speech. So let's expose these smears one by one. Here's Kamala lying about abortion, birth control, and IVF. Take a look.
Trump's not done. He would ban abortion nationwide, restrict access to birth control and put IVF treatments at risk, and force states to monitor women's pregnancies. Just Google Project 2025 and read the plans for yourself.
That's like a triple lie in one paragraph. Here's a headline from CBS, quote, Trump says he would veto a federal abortion ban. He supports IVF. And by the way, does not call for restrictions on birth control, the opposite of what Harris claimed tonight. He is also totally opposed to limiting any of this in any way, has called on the federal government to help fund IVF, as a matter of fact. And by the way, it is not Trump's Project 2025. He's not affiliated with it in any way, knows nothing about it, has never even read the so-called project. Kamala Harris is a liar, and her next lie was about Social Security and Medicare. Let's scare the old people, as per usual. Take a look.
Donald Trump has a different approach. He tried to cut Medicare and Social Security every year he was president.
Okay, here's the truth. Donald Trump says he will, quote, never do anything to cut benefits. In fact, benefits went up under Donald Trump in his first term. She's lying again. She also blatantly lied when she mentioned unity and bringing the country together. In reality, she and her surrogates are spending almost all their time, all their energy smearing, slandering her political rivals and playing political games. In fact, just seconds before promising to bring the country together, here's what she had to say about her political opponent. Wow, this is really unity, if I've ever heard it.
America, this is not a candidate for president who is thinking about how to make your life better. This is someone who is unstable, obsessed with revenge, consumed with grievance, and out for unchecked power. Donald Trump has spent a decade trying to keep the American people divided and afraid of each other. That is who he is.
That was like 10 lies in one paragraph. Amid all the smears and the slander, besmirchment, and lying, this was a robotic, uninspiring, meaningless speech. She claims she will represent all Americans, even those who don't vote for her, days after she and her acolytes were out there calling everyone supporting Donald Trump a Nazi and a fascist. She promised to always tell the truth, even when it's difficult. But she lied over and over again, didn't she, about inflation being transitory, the border being secure, about how comfortable she was with the Afghanistan withdrawal, and about Joe Biden's cognitive state. She says she will never denigrate or dishonor those in the military. She called the Afghan withdrawal a success. And when she is asked if she would have done anything differently or had any regrets from Joe Biden, she could not say that she regretted any decision, including the decision to allow our enemies to take over the security outside that air base in Afghanistan. Her inability to admit to her mistakes and failures that led to deaths and it dishonors the service of so many. What we are witnessing is a failing campaign and an attempt to try and regain the post-DNC bump a week before the election as they see more and more states falling out of reach. The desperation and panic is palpable. Still, this election, I always warn everybody, assume that your vote will decide the outcome of this election. And it's very close on paper, but the Harris campaign is clearly running scared. Today, we did learn that the campaign is now pulling millions of dollars in ad spending from North Carolina amid a, quote, surge of Republican early voters. There has been a similar surge across all the battleground states, and Trump is also outperforming expectations in national polling. And according to the most accurate pollster of 2020, Atlas Intel, Donald Trump is now up by nearly 2 points. Now, the same poll shows Trump ahead in all but one battleground state. And again, this will all mean nothing if you don't bank your vote. I voted Sunday. But you can still take joy in knowing that these polls are causing epic meltdowns on the left. Take a look.
Here's the warning. You all have set it up. But let me take it a step further, please, if I may. This is called normalization.
Yes.
Yeah. This is the descent into fascism, if we so choose.
They think, okay, we've already seen that movie. I can live with it for 4 more years. But it's not the same movie. You know, it's the sequel to Scream, where it's just that much bloodier. And, you know, there are people, I mean, you're a journalist. You and I might be sharing a cell in 6 months from now.
The stakes literally are life and death for every woman in America.
And he wants to start internment camps. And that's what we are busy talking to every voter. He's telling you what he's going to do. Believe him.
Internment camps?
Yes. He has talked internment camps. You know what, Jake? You may have to visit me in one. I get worried enough when he talks about what he's going to do to his political enemies.
And it gets worse. Remember irredeemable deplorables and bitter Americans clinging to their God, guns, Bibles, religion from Obama? Yeah, well, now President Biden, well, he couldn't stay out of the fray. He referred to Donald Trump's supporters as, quote, garbage. Watch.
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is just supporters.
Coming back.
Only garbage I see out there, just Trump supporters. Now, remember, according to Kamala, it's Donald, who he's the one that's fanning the flames of division. Take a look.
I talked with Governor Walz yesterday. Okay. He compared Trump's rally on Sunday to that of one of the Nazi rallies in the 30s at Madison Square Garden. Do you compare that? Do you find that a similar comparison?
Listen, this election is in 7 days, and I think the American people have a very clear choice. And on the one hand, you have Donald Trump, who is constantly fanning the flames of division and hate, who is trying to have the American people point their fingers at each other, or my leadership, which is founded on a lived and experience that the vast majority of us have more in common than what separates us.
Yeah, let's double down on Nazi, racist, fascist. It might be the clearest example of gaslighting and hypocrisy that we'll ever see. At the end of the day, only one question really matters. Are you better off than you were under Donald Trump? And so tonight, while Kamala is spending time with her friends in the Washington swamp, the former president, oh, look right there. He's in Allentown, Pennsylvania, in front of another massive crowd. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.